Would you make a deal with the devil to save the one you love? Maya Rodriguez never believed in fate, until the night a storm dragged her through Detroit's blood-soaked streets and into the arms of billionaire Alexander Kane. His winter blue eyes promised danger, but it was the silence behind them that screamed the loudest. She thought the handcuffs were the trap. She was wrong. Now, caught in a deadly game orchestrated by a woman in red, Maya is forced to question everything: his past, her own heart, and the cost of survival when love turns lethal. Some choices don't just break you, they burn the whole world down. If powerful stories of love, loss, and redemption move you, hit that like button. It helps more people discover love stories worth telling. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love connecting with you. And be sure to subscribe and ring that bell, because every story I share is chosen to make you feel something real. Enjoy the story. Rain hammered the cracked streets of Detroit's roughest neighborhood. Neon signs flickered like dying stars, casting bloody shadows on broken concrete. Sirens wailed through the darkness like ghosts crying for justice. Maya Rodriguez, 21 years old with fire in her eyes, walked through the storm. Her worn sneakers splashed through puddles that reflected her exhausted face. Water soaked through her thin jacket, but she didn't care. The diner had just closed, and her pockets held only crumpled bills, not nearly enough for what she needed. Her brother Carlos was dying, 15 years old, and fighting for his life in a hospital bed. The kidney disease was winning, and Maya was losing hope. She pressed her lips together, tasting salt from tears she refused to shed. Dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. All she wanted was one more day with Carlos. The streets of Detroit felt like a prison. Broken buildings watched her like dead eyes. Gang members lurked in doorways. The smell of decay filled her lungs. But Maya kept walking, because stopping meant giving up. Then the world exploded in red and blue light. Police cars surrounded her like vultures. 2 officers stepped out, their faces hard as stone. Their voices cut through the rain like knives. Maya Rodriguez, you're under arrest for stealing a diamond watch from Romano's restaurant. Maya's heart stopped. Her blood turned to ice. Stealing? I never took anything. Cold metal bit into her wrists. Handcuffs clicked shut like the sound of her world ending. The officer's eyes showed no mercy. You have the right to remain silent. As they dragged her toward the car, Maya screamed into the storm. You've got the wrong person. But the thunder swallowed her words. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched Detroit blur past. Her brother's face flashed in her mind, pale, weak, waiting for her to come home. How had her life become this nightmare? The police station reeked of despair and broken dreams. Maya sat shivering in a plastic chair, her wet clothes clinging to her skin like shame. Water dripped from her black hair onto the cold floor. The interrogation room felt like a tomb. Detective Johnson typed on his computer, barely looking at her. His voice was flat, emotionless. Maya Rodriguez, 21. Clean record until now. But we found a $50,000 diamond watch in the dumpster behind Romano's. Care to explain? Maya's hands shook, but her voice stayed strong. I didn't steal anything. Someone put it there to frame me. The detective's eyebrow lifted like he'd heard this lie 1,000 times. That's what they all say. Without proof, you're looking at 5 years in prison. 5 years. Maya's world crumbled. Carlos would be dead by then. She dug her nails into her palms until they bled, fighting to stay calm. But inside, she was screaming. The door opened, and everything changed. He walked in like a storm made flesh. Tall, powerful, wearing a suit that cost more than Maya's entire life. His dark hair was perfect, but his eyes, God, his eyes, were winter blue and sharp as broken glass. The room seemed to shrink around him. Alexander Kane, he said, and his voice was thunder rolling across mountains. "The watch belongs to me." Maya couldn't breathe. This man didn't belong in her world of poverty and pain. He was Manhattan penthouses and million-dollar deals. She was just a girl from the slums with nothing left to lose. Detective Johnson jumped to his feet. "Mr. Kane, we found your watch in the dumpster. Looks like she tried to dispose of it." Maya shot up from her chair. "I didn't steal anything. Someone planted it on me." Alexander raised his hand, and the room fell silent. He sat across from her, his eyes studying her face like he was reading her soul. Maya felt exposed, vulnerable, but she didn't look away. Pride was all she had left. "Who set you up?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Maya's mind raced back to that morning. A woman in red blonde, expensive perfume, perfect smile. She'd spilled coffee at the diner, then apologized while Maya cleaned up. That's when it happened. That's when her life became hell. "A woman in red," Maya whispered. "She came to the diner this morning." Alexander's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Victoria Sterling, my ex-lover. She's trying to destroy me, and you got caught in the crossfire." Maya's eyes blazed with fury. "Then why am I the one in chains?" Alexander leaned forward, his presence overwhelming. "Because you have no power, no money, no voice. But I can change that." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. "What's the price?" His eyes turned darker, more dangerous. "Be my girlfriend for 30 days. Attend my events. Play the part perfectly. Help me crush my enemy who's sleeping with Victoria. Do this, and I'll pay your bail, cover your legal fees, and give you enough money to save your brother." The words hit Maya like lightning. This wasn't about her body. It was about her soul. She thought of her mother's dying words. "Only give your heart to true love, Mija." "Why me?" Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. For the first time, something human flickered in his eyes. "Because you're not afraid of me, and because I want to see if you're strong enough to survive my world." Maya stared into those winter blue eyes. This man could destroy her with a thought, but something inside her recognized the challenge, the danger, the possibility that he might be the key to saving Carlos. She took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I'll be your fake girlfriend, but I have rules. You don't touch me unless I say yes. And if I want out, you let me go." Alexander's eyes lit up with something between respect and hunger. "Agreed. But I'll warn you, Maya, I don't lose." Maya stood, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Neither do I." The handcuffs came off, but Maya knew she'd just put on invisible chains that might be even more dangerous. Alexander led her through the rain to a sleek black car that cost more than most people's homes. Maya hesitated at the door, knowing that stepping inside meant leaving her old life behind forever. As Detroit disappeared in the rearview mirror, Maya pressed her face to the window. The broken buildings and shattered dreams faded into darkness. She was entering a new world, one where the stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined. Alexander's cologne filled the car, expensive and intoxicating. His presence beside her was overwhelming, like sitting next to a barely contained storm. Maya kept her hands folded, trying to ignore how her heart raced every time he looked at her. "Where are we going?" she asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. His eyes met hers in the darkness. "My penthouse. You'll need somewhere to stay if you're going to convince the world you're mine." The word mine sent electricity through Maya's veins. She pressed her lips together, reminding herself this was just business. But the way he said it, possessive, hungry, made her wonder if she was walking into a trap she'd never escape. The penthouse towered above the city like a glass throne. Maya stepped out of the elevator and gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the entire city spread below like scattered diamonds. Everything was perfect, expensive, cold. standing in the center of it all, still dripping wet from the rain. Maya felt small, but she lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. Alexander removed his jacket with predatory grace. Bedrooms down the hall. There are clothes in the closet. Shower. Get clean. Tomorrow, you become someone new. Maya nodded, but paused at the doorway. Alexander, he turned, those dangerous eyes focusing on her completely. Thank you, she whispered. Something soft flickered across his face. Don't thank me yet, Maya. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into. In the marble bathroom, twice the size of her apartment, Maya let hot water wash away the grime of her old life. But no amount of heat could wash away the fear that she just made a deal with the devil himself. When she emerged wearing a silk dress that hugged her curves like liquid midnight, Alexander was waiting by the window. He turned, and his eyes moved over her with an intensity that made her skin burn. Beautiful, he murmured, but there was something dangerous in his voice. Tomorrow night, there's a charity gala. You'll meet Victoria and my business rival, Marcus Thompson. Are you ready? Maya squared her shoulders. I've survived Detroit streets. I can handle your world. Alexander smiled, but it was sharp as a blade. We'll see. That night, Maya lay in the guest bedroom staring at the ceiling. Through the walls, she could hear Alexander moving around, and every sound made her pulse quicken. She thought about her mother's promise, about Carlos waiting in his hospital bed, about the dangerous game she'd agreed to play. Outside, the city glittered like a beautiful trap, and somewhere in the darkness, she knew her enemies were planning their next move. Maya Rodriguez had entered Alexander Kane's world. Now she had to survive it. The charity gala blazed with light and laughter, but Maya felt like she was walking into a battlefield. The ballroom dripped with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns. Every face turned toward her as she entered on Alexander's arm. She wore emerald silk that flowed like water, her dark hair cascading over bare shoulders. Alexander had insisted on the dress, and now she understood why. She looked like she belonged in his world, even though her heart still beat with the rhythm of Detroit's broken streets. Remember, Alexander whispered, his breath warm against her ear. You're mine tonight. Let them see it. His hand on her waist was possessive, burning through the silk. Maya smiled and played her part, but inside, she was memorizing every face, every whispered conversation, every enemy hiding behind polite smiles. Then she saw them. Victoria Sterling glided across the room like a golden serpent. Her blonde hair was perfect. Her red dress cost more than Maya's entire neighborhood, and her smile was poison wrapped in beauty. Beside her walked Marcus Thompson, tall, cruel-eyed, watching Alexander like a hunter stalking prey. Well, well, Victoria purred as she approached. Alexander's new toy. She's quaint. Maya felt Alexander's muscles tense, but she stepped forward before he could speak. Her voice was honey over steel. And you must be the woman who plants evidence on innocent people. How charming. The ballroom went silent. Victoria's perfect smile cracked like breaking glass. Marcus laughed, but his eyes were cold. Careful, little girl. You're playing in the deep end now. Maya moved closer, her brown eyes blazing. I learned to swim in waters that would drown you both. Alexander's hand tightened on her waist, and she could feel his admiration radiating through his touch. He pulled her closer, his voice like velvet-wrapped steel. Gentlemen, ladies, I'd like you to meet Maya Rodriguez, the woman who's about to change everything. The crowd murmured, but Maya only had eyes for Alexander. In that moment, surrounded by enemies and lies, something real passed between them. Something that made her forget this was supposed to be fake. The rest of the evening blurred past in a haze of champagne and whispered threats. Maya played her part perfectly. The devoted girlfriend, the woman who couldn't keep her hands off Alexander Kane. But every touch, every kiss on her temple, every possessive gesture sent fire through her veins. When they finally returned to the penthouse, the air between them crackled with unspoken desire. "You were magnificent," Alexander said, his voice rougher than usual. He poured himself whiskey, but didn't drink it. Instead, he stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Maya kicked off her heels, suddenly feeling vulnerable in the silk dress. "Is this what your world is always like? Pretty lies and beautiful poison?" Alexander set down his glass and walked toward her. His eyes were darker now, hungry. "You handle Victoria better than anyone ever has. She's dangerous, Maya." "They all are." "So are you," Maya whispered, but she didn't back away as he stopped inches from her. "Yes," he breathed. "I am." They stood there, tension crackling between them like lightning before a storm. Maya could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell his cologne mixed with something purely masculine. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "This is just pretend," she said, but her voice shook. Alexander's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Is it?" Maya closed her eyes, fighting the pull she felt toward this dangerous man. When she opened them again, Alexander was studying her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "I should go to bed," she whispered. "You should," he agreed, but neither of them moved. The moment stretched between them, full of possibilities and dangers. Finally, Alexander stepped back, his jaw tight with control. "Good night, Maya." She fled to her room, her heart racing. Behind her closed door, she pressed her back against the wood and tried to breathe. This was supposed to be business, a transaction, but the way Alexander looked at her, touched her, made her feel things she'd never experienced. Maya thought of her mother's dying words about true love. Was she about to break that promise for a man who might destroy her? In the living room, Alexander stood by the window, his hands clenched into fists. He'd wanted to kiss her so badly it physically hurt. But Maya Rodriguez wasn't like the other women in his world. She was real, honest, dangerous to his carefully controlled life. For the first time in years, Alexander Kane was afraid, not of his enemies, but of the way this woman made him feel. The war for Maya's heart had begun, and neither of them knew who would survive it. 3 weeks into their dangerous dance, Maya's world exploded. She woke to her phone buzzing with notifications. Tabloid headlines screamed across the screen. Slum girl's secret shame, and gold digger's dirty past. Photos of her at various events with Alexander filled the pages, each one more twisted than the last. Maya's hands shook as she read the lies. They painted her as a scheming opportunist who'd seduced Alexander for his money. Every moment of genuine emotion between them was reframed as calculated manipulation. Alexander found her in the kitchen, still in her silk nightgown, staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. "Maya!" His voice was soft, concerned, but she heard something else underneath doubt. "Did you know?" she asked without looking up. "Did you know they were going to destroy me like this?" Alexander's silence was her answer. Maya laughed bitterly. "Of course, this was always part of the plan, wasn't it? Make me look like the villain so you come out clean." "That's not." "Don't." Maya stood, her eyes blazing through tears. "Just don't lie to me anymore." She walked toward the bedroom, but Alexander caught her arm. His touch burned, but not with desire, with desperation. "Maya, listen to me. This is Marcus and Victoria's work. They're trying to turn us against each other." Maya pulled free, her voice breaking. "Then they've succeeded, because I can't tell the difference between your lies and their lies anymore." That evening brought worse news. Marcus had convinced Alexander's board of directors that the scandal was affecting company stock. They demanded Alexander end his relationship with Maya immediately or face removal as CEO. Alexander stood in his office, looking out at the city he'd fought to conquer. Behind him, his lawyers and advisors spoke in urgent whispers about damage control and strategic retreats. But all Alexander could think about was Maya's face when she'd read those headlines. The way her trust had crumbled. The way she'd looked at him like he was her enemy. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Choose wisely, old friend. The company or the girl." Alexander's grip tightened on his phone until his knuckles went white. He'd built his empire through calculation and control. Every decision had been about power, about winning. But Maya had changed everything. That night, Alexander returned to the penthouse to find Maya packing. She'd traded the designer dresses for her old jeans and a simple sweater. Seeing her dressed like the girl from Detroit again made his chest ache. "Running away?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Maya didn't look at him. "Our deal is over. You got what you wanted. Victoria and Marcus are distracted by their little victory. Now you can swoop in and destroy them while they're celebrating. That's not why I wanted you here." Maya zipped her bag closed and finally faced him. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "Then why? What was this really about, Alexander?" He stood there, this powerful man who commanded respect and fear, and found himself speechless. How could he tell her that somewhere between their first fake kiss and last night's real embrace, he'd fallen completely, utterly in love with her? "Maya, forget it." She headed for the door. "I don't want to know. Some truths are too dangerous." Alexander watched her walk away, and for the first time in his adult life, he felt powerless. The woman he loved thought he'd betrayed her, and maybe he had. Maybe he'd been betraying her from the very beginning. As the elevator doors closed on Maya's tear-stained face, Alexander made a decision that would change everything. He pulled out his phone and dialed his lawyer. "Draw up the papers," he said quietly. "I'm stepping down as CEO." If he had to choose between his empire and Maya Rodriguez, there was no choice at all. But Marcus Thompson wasn't finished playing his games. And Maya was about to discover that some enemies won't let you walk away. Maya's phone rang as she walked through Detroit's rain-soaked streets. An unknown number, but she answered anyway. "Maya Rodriguez?" The voice was smooth, professional. "This is Jennifer Walsh from the International Children's Foundation. We'd like to offer you a position heading our education program in London. It's an incredible opportunity." Maya stopped walking, her heart racing. London, a chance to start over, to build something meaningful with her life. It was everything she'd dreamed of, but never dared hope for. I'd need some time to think about it," she managed. "Of course, we'll send the details to your email." Maya hung up, but before she could process the miracle that had just landed in her lap, another text arrived from an unknown number. "Take the job and disappear, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman you really are. You have 24 hours. Marcus, even now, he wouldn't let her go. Maya sank onto a bench in the rain, her dreams crashing around her like broken glass. She could run to London and spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, or she could stay and fight. But fighting meant facing Alexander again, and her heart wasn't sure it could survive another encounter with those winter blue eyes. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert. Kane Enterprises CEO resigns amid scandal. Maya's blood turned to ice. She clicked the link and read in shock as Alexander announced his resignation, citing personal reasons and a desire to focus on what truly mattered in life. "No," Maya whispered. "No, no, no." She was running before she realized it, her feet carrying her back toward the glass tower where Alexander lived. He couldn't throw away everything he'd built. Not for her. Not when she'd already walked away. The doorman recognized her and let her up without question. Maya's heart hammered as the elevator climbed toward the penthouse. What would she say? How could she fix what had been broken between them? The elevator doors opened to reveal Alexander standing by the window, his back to her. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and his dark hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. "You resigned," Maya said softly. Alexander turned, and the raw pain in his eyes nearly brought her to her knees. "You came back," he said, his voice hoarse with disbelief. They stood there in the golden light of the setting sun. Two broken people who'd found each other in the storm and lost each other just as quickly. "Why?" Maya whispered. "Why would you give up everything?" Alexander walked toward her slowly, like she might bolt if he moved too fast. "Because everything means nothing without you." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Alexander, I love you," he said simply. "I've loved you since the night you stood up to Victoria at the gala. Since you made terrible coffee and laughed at my attempts to cook. Since you looked at me like I was worth saving instead of conquering." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd spent weeks telling herself this was all fake, all business. But the man standing before her was raw, vulnerable, offering her his heart with no guarantees. "They'll destroy you," Maya said, her voice breaking. "Marcus, Victoria, the board, they won't stop." Alexander cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "Let them try. I'd rather have one real day with you than a lifetime of empty victories." Maya closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "I got offered a job in London." She felt Alexander's hand still, felt him preparing to let her go again. "Take it," he said quietly. "If that's what you want, take it. I won't be another cage keeping you trapped." Maya opened her eyes and saw the truth written across his face. He would let her go, even though it would destroy him, because he loved her enough to want her happiness more than his own. That's when she knew. "I don't want London," Maya whispered. "I want you, all of you. The good, the bad, the dangerous. I want to fight beside you instead of running away." Alexander's control finally snapped. He kissed her with all the desperation and love he'd been holding back, pouring 3 weeks of longing into the press of his lips against hers. Maya kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt like she could keep him anchored to her by will alone. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back. It's you and me against the world." Maya smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it reached her eyes. "I grew up in Detroit, remember? I know how to fight." Alexander laughed, the sound rich and full of joy. "Then let's go to war." But first, they had to deal with Marcus Thompson, and Maya had a plan that would turn his own weapons against him. The press conference was Alexander's idea, but the execution was all Maya. They stood together on the steps of Kane Enterprises, facing a sea of reporters and flashing cameras. Maya wore a simple blue dress. Not designer, not expensive, just honest. Alexander stood beside her in a perfectly tailored suit, but his eyes never left her face. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander began, his voice carrying across the crowd, "I'd like to introduce you to Maya Rodriguez, not as my business partner or my strategic alliance, but as the woman I love." The crowd erupted in questions, but Maya stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. 3 weeks ago, I was arrested for a crime I didn't commit. I was used as a pawn in a game between powerful men who saw me as disposable. But I'm not disposable. I'm a woman who grew up fighting for everything I have, and I'm not about to stop now. She looked directly into the cameras, her brown eyes blazing with determination. Marcus Thompson orchestrated a campaign to destroy my reputation because he was afraid of what Alexander and I represent together. He planted evidence, spread lies, and threatened me to keep quiet. But I won't be silenced anymore. Maya held up her phone, and her voice rang out like a battle cry. I have recordings of his threats, emails proving his involvement in the frame-up, and testimony from his own employees about his illegal activities. The truth always comes out, Mr. Thompson. And today, it's coming for you. The crowd went wild as Maya played the recordings. Marcus's voice filled the air, cold and threatening, offering bribes and making promises to destroy her if she didn't disappear. In his office across the city, Marcus Thompson watched the press conference with growing horror. His carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling in real time, broadcast live to the world. Within hours, the FBI was at his door with a warrant for his arrest. That evening, Maya and Alexander sat on the penthouse balcony, watching the sun set over the city they'd just claimed as their own. Maya was curled against Alexander's side, his arm around her waist like he never intended to let her go. "No regrets?" Alexander asked softly. Maya looked up at him, this dangerous, beautiful man who'd given up everything for her love. "Only one." Alexander's body tensed. "What?" Maya smiled, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I should have kissed you that first night instead of making you wait 3 weeks. Alexander laughed, the sound rich and free. He tilted her face up to his. And this time when he kissed her, it wasn't desperate or hungry. It was a promise, a beginning. "I love you, Maya Rodriguez," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too, Alexander Kane," she whispered back. Forever. 6 months later, Maya stood in a white silk dress on a beach in California, her dark hair flowing in the ocean breeze. Alexander waited for her at the end of a petal-strewn aisle, his eyes bright with tears of joy. Carlos, healthy and strong again thanks to the treatment Alexander had paid for, walked Maya down the aisle with a grin that could have powered the entire city. As Maya placed her hand in Alexander's, she thought of her mother's dying words about saving her heart for true love. She'd kept that promise, even when it seemed impossible. "Ready?" Alexander asked, his voice thick with emotion. Maya looked into his eyes, no longer winter cold but warm as summer skies, and smiled. "I've been ready since the moment I met you." They kissed as husband and wife while the waves crashed behind them, and Maya knew that some storms were worth weathering if they led you home to love. Alexander Kane had conquered the business world, but Maya Rodriguez had conquered his heart. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. Their love story had begun in handcuffs and lies, but it would continue in truth and devotion. Some fairy tales start in ballrooms, but the best ones begin in the storm and end in sunshine. Maya and Alexander had found their forever in each other's arms, and no force on earth could tear them apart again.